Let's go.
All right. Hey there, this is Ryan King with DS Murphy Inspections, here to give homeowners a few helpful hints for maintaining their home while you're safer at home. We've only got a couple people in this chat here today, so we'll make this work. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is these are things that you can do while you're at home. You may be able to do these are minor maintenance items. You shouldn't really need a contractor to come in for this. Um, Although if you're not comfortable with some of these things, you might. First thing I'm going to talk about is these critter guards on plumbing vents on your roof. You see the left-hand picture is a picture I actually took of the plumbing vent. The flashing on it is actually made of lead, so squirrels like to chew on it. Lead is very sweet to the taste, so squirrels jump up on your roof and start chewing on this. They give themselves lead poisoning when they do it. They don't know that. But what happens is you see the gaps between the pipe and the flashing. That's where moisture can get into your home. So most roofs in Florida, it's pretty low pitch. It's relatively easy to walk on. Obviously, if you've got a steeper pitch roof or clay tile roof, I would not recommend walking on that. Stay safe, obviously. But if you can, get up there and get these critter guards. You see on the right-hand side, you basically just slip it down over the pipe, screw it into place, and that prevents the squirrels from being able to chew on it. And it prevents moisture intrusion from getting into your attic. While we're on the topic of squirrels, another thing you could do to prevent them from actually getting into your attic is sealing up the roof, the AC chase into the attic. So this right here is the AC on the outside of your house. A lot of times you'll see this, it will go up through this chase and the Freon line will go up into the attic. Oftentimes this chase is not sealed up, as we'll see on the left side. This is the number one spot where squirrels and other rodents can get into the attic. So you definitely want to seal that up. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, get this spray called Great Stuff. It's expanding foam. You just spray that up in there. It expands and seals it up. Squirrels can't get into your attic.
Is there a particular great foam we should use? Are there different kinds?
That's the one I would recommend. Is what it's called, Great Stuff. It's the actual name of the stuff. And just expands in there. There are probably other brands, other things that it's called. And each of them will work. It's just pretty easy to remember. Great Stuff.
All right.
The next thing we're going to talk about is got a couple slides on insulation. Now, I'm not talking about all the insulation in your attic, the blown stuff where you open up your attic and it snows down on top of you. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that black foam insulation. You can actually see it here on this Freon line. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's the kind of insulation I want to talk about. And I always recommend insulating your hot water lines. You can find a water heater and any hot water lines you can find. You want to insulate that. The reason being is that you're heating up the water inside your water heater. You're paying to heat it up, and it's expanding, going through the lines, and it's actually cooling off before you're getting a chance to use it, which doesn't make much sense. So the more hot water lines you can insulate, the more money you're going to save over time. You're going to get hotter water quicker to all your fixtures, so you won't have to run as much water to let it get hot. This is an example of an air handler condensation drain line. This one happens to be inside of an attic. And most of these are pictures that I actually took while I'm on inspections. So these are firsthand pictures from me. So on the left-hand side, you can see the black foam insulation coming out of the right side. That's the condensation drain line. They did a good job insulating it straight out of the air handler. But in the middle picture, you can see they decided they wanted to stop. I don't know if they just ran out of the insulation and forgot to go back and get more. I don't know what happened. And the third picture is actually extending all the way to the end of the attic where it's going to the outside. So you want to make sure you get insulation on this if you can get there. Reason being is that especially up in the attic, the condensation line carries out water from the AC, and that cool water inside the pipe has a tendency to make the pipe sweat in the attic. It's like a cold glass of water on a hot day. You're going to get that sweat on the outside of it, and then it can drip down onto the roof. So this is another picture that I took. That's my hand. You can see an area of the condensation drain line in the attic where the insulation is ripped. And just on the other side of that paint can, you can see where it's been dripping down onto the drywall on the ceiling. So when you've got stuff like this, you'll get stains on the ceiling, and you can potentially think that you've got a roof leak. You call out a roofer to come check it out, and they tell you there's nothing wrong. You just wasted your money. So basically, you just want to make sure all of your condensation drain lines are insulated for this reason. Also dealing with the AC, we get this a lot. One of the more common things that I see. This is the Freon line at the AC outside. Now, you're not going to get much condensation here causing damage to your house, but what you're doing here is you're losing efficiency. As the Freon goes through this line, it's losing efficiency. So you want to make sure you get that insulated. Now this is that same Freon line in the attic again. Now this can do the same thing as the condensation line. It can sweat and drip down and cause stains and water damage. This is an air handler as well. The first thing I want you to take a look at is this here. This is an overflow switch. What happens is when the condensation line, water goes through this condensation line, it tends to build up algae, and that can cause blockages. So if it gets blocked, the water will back up into here. It'll come into here and it'll float a little switch, and there's a float switch. So when the water hits here, the switch floats up and it shuts off the unit. So if your unit isn't turning on for whatever reason, check this, make sure you don't have a backup in your condensation line. If you do, you can drain it out, take a shot back to the outside where this drains out, and that'll clear it out. Really, this should be level with the AC unit here. You don't really want this dip here. This is a trick that AC companies like to do to get callbacks and service calls. So if it does back up, it'll drain into here, float the switch, turn it off. You figure out that that's the problem, and you go drain the condensation line on the outside, but then it still won't turn on. You don't know why. Well, that's because you've still got water sitting in here. So if you just remove this little dip, have it coming straight out of the air handler, it'll be plumbed in a way that it's self-draining, is what I say. So that way, when you clear out the line, it drains on its own, and you don't have to make unnecessary service calls for an AC company to come dump out the little bit of water that's in here. Now, to prevent all of this from happening, backups from happening in the first place, this right here is your clean out cap. Now, a bunch of old school people will tell you to pour bleach down this line. I do not recommend using bleach. While the bleach will kill the algae, it'll also kill your grass outside, and it'll make the pipes brittle over time. If you use a 50-50 mixture of white vinegar and water, and you pour about a cup's worth of that down this line about once a month, once every 1 to 3 months, that'll help keep the lines clear and prevent backups from happening in the first place. And the vinegar is not going to kill your grass or make the pipes brittle. So keep your lines moving, use vinegar, not bleach. Another thing you can do is change your air filters. It's pretty simple. A lot of people forget. I know people who have forgotten to change their air filters for a couple of years, and then they took them out. They were pretty disgusting. You should change your air filter every 1 to 3 months, that general range. But when you do that, make sure you pay attention to the airflow arrow. These filters are designed to have the airflow through them a certain way. I see all the time air filters installed backwards, and they're not gonna operate at their highest efficiency if they're installed backwards. Next thing we're going to talk about is caulking, caulking, caulking. I say this in every single one of my inspections without fail. It's my personal opinion that every home should be sold with a case of caulk. And if you've used me before as an inspector, I've probably told you that to your face. You can caulk anywhere. The biggest places are going to be the bathrooms and the showers and tubs, where you've got grout in corners. And grout, when it's in a corner or when it's touching a dissimilar material, is going to crack. It's just the nature of the material. So when it does, especially in wet areas like showers, you're going to get water back behind there, can cause deterioration back behind the sheathing. Get a little bit of caulk. You can color match. When you're in wet areas like bathrooms, I always recommend mold and mildew resistant caulking. Silicone based, it's a little bit more flexible. Get the good caulk. Pay a little bit more up front for the better caulking, and it'll last you a much longer time. Make sure you get in the corners like you see here, but also you're going to want to get around here, around the faucet handles and around the faucet itself. How many times have you gone into a shower and you've seen something like this, the big gap behind the faucet? A lot of people don't pay much attention to it, but I knew an inspector one time who pressed on the tile back behind this, and the tile just fell in. Because over a period of years and years, water had been getting back behind this crack and rotted out the sheathing that was behind it, and everything just collapsed inward. It took an extremely long time for that to happen, but I like to tell people an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So basically, a little bit of effort, just keeping this sealed up, will prevent a big problem in the future. Also in the kitchen, biggest thing is going to be the backsplash back behind the sink, for the same reasons you don't want water getting back behind where it's not supposed to be. Water can cause nothing but damage when it's not where it's supposed to be. Another place is baseboards. Throughout your home, tile floors, laminate floors, put a little bit of caulking on your baseboards. Twofold reasons for this. The first is if you're mopping, obviously you don't want water to get underneath the baseboards and cause water stains and water damage under there. The second reason is just energy efficiency. When you've got these big gaps here, you've got some gaps around the windows with cracked caulking. All these little gaps can add up on average to about a 14 square inch hole just in the side of your wall that you're losing energy through. So again, all these little things do add up. On the exterior, now keep in mind this is an example photo. If you have a crack this large in your stucco, you may want to have it looked at by a professional. So for demonstration purposes, this crack is larger than what I'm talking about. But the same thing, you get different kind of caulking. You actually get stucco repair caulk. There are tons of different kinds of caulking. It'll take a little bit of research to figure out which one needs to go where. But you'll see here, it says stretches like rubber. Always get flexible caulking. You don't want a real rigid, stiff caulk, because as the building moves, it expands and contracts naturally. Every building does, with different moisture levels and different temperatures. So as it expands and contracts, so does the caulk. And if you don't have a flexible caulking, it'll crack sooner and you'll be back to square one. When it comes to things on the exterior like this, mind you, this is going to be a major example, an extreme example. But if you don't do this, moisture can get into these cracks and eventually can do something like this. Again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I did actually take this photo myself, and that's pretty much exactly what's happening. The cracks were neglected, water got in there, nobody paid attention to them, and so here we are. I see this all the time, and I don't understand why it's not installed. these anti-tip brackets for an oven actually come with the new appliance. So when it's installed, it's right there with the appliance. But so many times, probably 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it's not installed. And it's just a little L bracket. It attaches to the wall in the floor back behind the stove. And this is exactly why you do it. You attach it here, you slide the stove in. So if you've got a cookie jar up here or something, a kid won't try to use the door as a step and it won't fall over on top of them. It is a safety device. So simple to install. So many times it's not installed. It's one of those things I really just don't understand, but it is what it is. The last little tip I'm going to have for you here is dishwasher drain line. I see this all the time too. It should have a high loop, meaning that you see here, this is probably what your kitchen sink looks like, but this is the dishwasher drain line. It comes from the dishwasher over here and up into your disposal where it drains out. What you want to have is this diagram. You want it to have a high loop here and then come down into the drain. And this basically works as sort of a reverse P-trap. It prevents backflow from the sink, backflow from when the dishwasher is draining, and it prevents leaking out of your dishwasher. It can cause major problems when you don't have a high loop, and you can cause leaking back behind your dishwasher. You don't know it until it's way too late. So that's the last tip I have for you here. Just wanted to let you know what we've got going on right now. At DS Murphy Inspections, when you buy a 4-point, you can get a wind mitigation for free. If you haven't gotten a wind mitigation in a while, if you're shopping around for insurance, call us. We can do a wind mitigation for you. We'll come out there. It'll take 30 minutes. Then you submit this to your insurance company. You can get deductions on your premium, pretty substantial ones sometimes. Also, all medical professionals, ambulance drivers, law enforcement, firefighters, and other first responders get 25% off all services right off the bat. We want to make sure we thank everybody who's out there putting themselves on the line, trying to keep us safe and stop the spread of this virus that's going on. With that, that's the end of my presentation. So if anybody has any questions for me now, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, so opening the floor to questions. And if you got one, ask away. If you are muted, you can press your space bar to unmute. All right, doesn't sound like we have any questions, Ryan. Thank you very much for the great tips. I'm gonna stop the recording now, and I'll go ahead and upload and share this video out as well. Share with everyone I invited. Thank you very much.
Thank you.